Hello and welcome to Quizzes 2.0 with new Canvas quizzes. I'm Bradon Lewis. I work for the Office of Digital Education, and today we're going to be going over a new quiz functionality that is inside of Canvas. To give a little bit of background on the quizzing is for the last couple of years, Canvas has been piloting their new quizzes engine or their new quizzes functionality that will go live in about a year into Canvas. And so currently right now we have the old version of quizzes. This is the new and improved functionality of Quizzes 2.0. Sometimes you'll hear it saying quiz next. That's what the pilot name was. Now they're just calling it new quizzes. And when it goes live in about a year, it'll just be quizzes. And so some of the names might change back and forth. But during this webinar, I'll go ahead and show you some of the main differences. This webinar, I also have several of my coworkers here in the chat room and in the webinar. So if you have any questions throughout this, feel free to use the chat box. I do also want to point out at the very end, though, we will have a section for Q&A. So you might want to go ahead and hold your questions to the very end. And that way we can make sure that you can focus just on what we're doing in the webinar and not have to worry about getting your questions asked back and forth in the chat box. One of the things I want to get started or to say before yes, and again, we'll cover this a little bit more as we go on. But right now, you will have the ability to turn quizzes on, and I'll show you how you can add this into your courses now. But in about a year, it will go live permanently to everybody, and we'll have further communication that comes out of when it switches from the old version to the new version. Before we get started, one of the things I always want to make sure I highlight at the beginning of our trainings, if you have any questions about our training or want to know about future trainings down the road, feel free to email us at odetraining@ucdenver.edu, or you can actually go to our website, cuonline.edu/edu. Sorry, /training, not edu. So that's cuonline.edu/training. And that's where you can find out information on all our various trainings that we have. In this particular area, if you have any questions or down the road you need support, the absolute best place to go is to Canvas directly through Canvas support. My preferred favorite is actually using the chat box. What's great about Canvas support is they're available 24/7. So I can go into the chat box, submit their question. They're going to be able to look at my quiz live into it and be able to give me information right there. Now, they won't be able to help you choose what the better style of the question is or dig deeper into pedagogy on how you can maybe build your assessment to better engage your curriculum. That's something that Office of Digital Education can do. But if you're looking for peer support where something isn't working, you're not quite sure what's going on, Canvas support is a great way to go. If you don't want to use a chat box, you can also email them or actually call them. And again, they are available 24/7. In this little webinar, we're going to go over several different things. The first is going to be showing you a demo of what the new quiz looks like. Then I'm going to show you how you can add it to your course and what that process is there. And then I'm going to show you how you can create the quizzes along with the different types of quiz questions that are available. Then how to grade. And then one of the features, if we have time, is going to be item banks. I want to kind of asterisk the item banks. This is question banks. If we don't have enough time, I don't want to open that can of worms, but there are videos available, and also you can email us directly, and we can set up a consultation if you're really interested in using quiz banks, item banks. I'll be more than happy to go over that there. But I just want to put a little asterisk right there saying if we have time, we'll cover item banks, because I want to make sure at the very end I have time for people to ask their cute questions at the very end. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into Canvas, and I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. And so right here on my screen, I should be sharing my Canvas screen. And this is what it's going to look like when you go into Canvas. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go straight to settings. I'm going to jump into student view, and this is where you can see the quizzes as a student would see it. And I'm going to go ahead and select on my demo quiz here just so we can see. So right off the bat, it looks very different. The welcome screen that comes on, this is actually showing the introduction of the quiz. And then I also have a section here where I'm providing the instructions for the quiz. And I went ahead and just added a random graphic up there to show how you can go ahead and put a title, put a graphic, and it shows the basic information. And it looks very different than what you're used to seeing because it's a more visual presentation. Plus, down here, students will be able to see their previous attempt histories and then also view the results of those attempts. When they're ready to go in and take the quiz, I believe if I hit the right button, oh, you know what? Since I already took it, it's going to give me a different view. Already messed up. Hold on. Let me do one more time. Let me do this real fast. I made a slight mistake in preparing for this webinar. I went ahead and actually did this quiz as an example, and it looks like I copied it and I did something a little bit wrong. So I'm going to do this real fast, and I'll show you the preview built into it. I forgot to mention at the end of this training, this is the very first Quizzes Next 2.0 training that we're doing. And so there might be a little flaws in the systems that we discover live when we do this. Ah, that's right, I can. Thank you so much, Peggy. All right, that's exactly what it's supposed to look like. So you're seeing the description up here. Here are the directions that we're adding, and of course you can add the graphics on here. If I had a due date listed, it'll show the due date right here, and then also the time limit that I'd given. When a student is ready to take it, all they have to do is hit begin, and they'll be taken into the example right here. One of the features that I went ahead and enabled onto this, just to show you what it looks like, is you now have the ability to have a calculator show up and be visible on the screen. So I can go up here. Well, I used to be able to go up there. And there should be a calculator button that shows up right here. And that way you can turn it on and they have a calculator they can use right on the screen without having to go away. One of the settings that I've currently done is as you go through here, it's going to show all the questions at once. If you wanted to, you could also do one question at a time as you could with the previous one. And so students are going to be able to go on here. This is a standard matching one where I can say, I can answer the questions and I can go through here and select it just like you normally would. Here's an example of an essay. I currently has a minimum of 400 and a maximum of 70. This is a 700. This is what you can do for the essay questions, where it'll actually count each of the words and it'll stop you when you hit that maximum. So you can create these essays where students can go ahead and answer it, but it's ensuring that they're not going to go too crazy and answer a very long, give it longer than what you want response. If a student wants to change the width or size of this frame, they can go as large or as small as they want, so they can actually have enough space to type it in. And as you'll notice inside of quizzes, it's a very different content editor than what you're used to seeing. It's very simplified so that they don't have to worry about all the other options over here. But if you still wanted to, you can have your students upload media. And so as you'll see on here, a student can actually upload a photo, an audio file, or a video file. So you can create quizzes and have them create this media and upload it, or have this ready for them to upload. And again, here's an example of a true or false question. I can do number questions. This right here is a numerical answer where they can go ahead and do a formula or a math question right here and just answer the number values into it. And they're looking for an exact number or a range. Here's an example of a drag and drop where they can actually have one of these answers right here, move it up here and drop it into the right area. I kind of cheated and made sure that I knew which ones were. You probably wouldn't put the color blue and then have blue right there. It'd be a little confusing. But I can see how I can just drag and drop these around for the answer. Here's another example of a new feature of where I can go ahead and select a hot spot on an image. So you're able to upload an image to the screen. And then using a mouse and cursor, I can actually go through here and say, all right, looks like the monster is right there. Oh, looks like it wanted to choose. But then I can see right here when I selected on the screen, it selected an area right there as where I selected. So you can actually do this with a lot of different ways, or if you can have questions you put up there, you could have a pronunciation or a spelling up there, and they could select the things that are wrong or they select the things that are right by just using the cursor right there. And that's using a hotspot. Here's a multiple choice answer where I can select as many choices as I want. Here is placing in the correct order. So I can actually drag and drop using my cursor, and I can arrange these so that they're in the correct order. So this would be helpful if you're doing dates or numbers. You want to make sure you get things in the correct order. Here's another area where you can upload a prize. So if you wanted to have a work ahead of time, I'm sorry, upload a document, not a prize, where you can have your students go ahead and work on an image or a document or a PDF. Where during the quiz, you can say, all right, now it's time I need you to upload the project you've been working on. You have the ability to upload files inside of quizzes now. Here's an example of true and false. And then here's the last example I'm going to show here is a fill in the blank. This is where you can actually have the answers down here of different ones. And then the correct answer they just go up here, place it up there. And that's how you can fill in the blank using different ones right there. It's also important that you want to make sure that you're putting the correct answer in there. And as you see, I can move it back and forth. And when you submit the score, if you have any questions that are unanswered, since these are ones that I haven't finished, it's going to go ahead and remind people saying, you have these questions, but unfortunately they haven't been finished and completed. And so you need to go ahead and answer them. So I can either cancel it and go back and answer it, or I can go ahead and submit the quiz and complete. And then this is what the student will see if you have the feature where it's going to show them the answer. They're going to be able to go here and see the what they got correct, how many they got correct, and the time they spent on it. And then it's going to show them the answers that they got right or wrong. The way I currently have this quiz set up is they can take it as many times as they want, and the highest score will be recorded. So I don't necessarily mind the fact that they're seeing the correct answer or wrong answers, but I could also turn this off to where they just see this top part up here and they won't see the answers. But if they clearly see on here that they want to retake it again, I can click take now, and they can retake the quiz again and again. So that's a very short demo of how the news quiz feature works inside for the students. Now let's go in and go ahead and get it on for your account. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to create a sandbox and have a brand new empty course so that we can start from right there. I will accept my invitation, and then let me scroll to my dashboard page, and there should be a new sandbox course right there that I can start using. So I'm in my blank course right now. And so this is going to be the assumption where if you're in one of your courses and you want to use the new quiz feature, here are the steps that you'll need to take to get the news quiz feature alive and working into your course. Currently, by default, you will have to turn on the new quiz feature if you're wanting to use it. Otherwise, when you go to quizzes, it'll be using the old standard format of quizzes. To do this, you want to go to settings. So I'm going to the course settings and I'm wanting to change this. And then I'm going to go down to feature options. As you'll see over here, there's a whole bunch of feature options that we at the university have made available, but then you have the choice of whether or not you want to have that. And the news quizzes is one of those items. So I'm going to go ahead and check mark right there. And that's all I have to do to get the new quizzes available in your courses is going into your course settings, selecting feature options, and turning the new quizzes on. Now, one of the things that this also does right now is normally the process that we go through and do is to go into your modules page, create a new module, and create a new quizzes. And so what you can do here is that's how you create it. Unfortunately, when you go through this workflow, it actually doesn't allow you to create new quizzes. So what you want to do is go to quizzes, and then here by selecting plus quiz, this is where you want to create the new quizzes. This screen right here is choose which quiz engine. This is the only place that you'll see this is if you go to the quiz and say new quiz. So again, that's why you can't go to modules to create these new quizzes. You'll have to do them from that quiz section. And ultimately, if you want to use a new quiz engine, it's up to you whether or not you want to turn it off or on. The main difference is there are some limitations, such as Proctorio and third-party tools currently do not work with the new version of quizzes. So if you're wanting to use TextMythnomia, or if you're wanting to use Proctorio, or if you're wanting to use some of the old features and functionalities, you'll be one of those things you'll want to use the old version. The new quizzes, the moment you turn it on, they do become live. And so it is instant. It doesn't take any delay. As you see on here, I just turned it on and went straight to quizzes, and then I'm able to create the new quizzes. I'm going to hit new quiz, and then I'm going to select new quiz right here and say submit. After I say submit, it's going to open up a new example of my quiz right here, and I'm going to be able to give it a name. And I can go down here and add the points value to it, or I can go ahead and leave it blank. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is worth, let's say, 20 points, just because it's in there. By going through this way, it's going to go ahead and change some of these items right here, external tools and listed right here. This is information that you don't need to go ahead and change right now. This is just the process it goes through in order to create the new quizzes. It's just looking for the title, the name, which assignment group that it's in, and then if you want to give it a due date. So I'm going to go ahead and say this quiz is due on the 3rd. Once I've entered all that information, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And then when it takes me back to the quizzes page, it takes me straight into building the quizzes. If I want to leave this page, all I need to do is hit this return button, and it'll take me back to quizzes. To get back to where I was just at, all I need to do is select the name of the quiz, and it takes me back into this new quiz generator. To point out some of the main areas, if I click on this build section right here, this allows me to build all of my questions, allows me to fill out the instructions, and change the title of my quiz. And that's all under the quiz tab. When I click on settings, I have the ability to choose different options for my quizzes. Do I want to shuffle the answers? Do I want to shuffle the questions? Meaning that if I shuffle the questions, they'll be in a different order, whether or not it's 1 through 10, it'll be a different order for each student. Shuffle answer means that if I go A, B, C, or D, the different letters will be in different orders depending on the way those questions are organized. I can also choose whether or not to have it one question at a time. I actually prefer to have all the questions on the screen. I find that students have a better experience with that. However, if you want to change it to one question at a time, you can do that by selecting this option right here. You also have the ability to have a student access code that you want to give or a password. So if you want to protect your quiz, you can actually set a password so that the only way students will be able to take the quiz is when you share that password with them. And so you can select a really narrow window, give them the passcode, and have them be able to take the quiz. I rarely use this, so I almost always leave that off. But if you want to, it is available. Then you have time limit. I really like using time limit when it comes to quizzes, because it ensures that my students are focusing just on the quiz and they're not using other things to distract them. So if I have a 20 question quiz, I'll give them about 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on the complexity of those questions. You also have the ability to filter IP addresses. By filtering IP addresses, the only time you really would ever want to do this is if you wanted to limit quiz being able to be taken on campus. That way everyone uses their own IP addresses because they're on campus. In most situations, you will not want to filter IP addresses, but that option is available if you want to use it. And as I said before, you have the ability to decide if you want to have a calculator visible. And you have the option, do you want to have a basic calculator or a scientific calculator? And so that is the option that you can do. And there'll be a little icon on the top of the screen that allows them to open the calculator and use it live. One of my favorite features is to allow multiple attempts. Because it's one of those things that allows quizzes to re-engage the material again and again, and it gives them a way to verify that they're learning the information. And so while I like giving students a multiple attempt, and then you don't necessarily even have to use an unlimited multiple attempt. I can actually say, no, I want to limit it to 4 times. And so I want the students to be able to re-engage the material, but I want to make sure they're not taking the quizzes all the time, every time. I want to make sure they reach a point where they finally realize they need to be paying attention to doing the quizzes, and the stakes get higher and higher each time, so that eventually when they get to the fourth time, they know, okay, I have to actually do my best right here. You could also go over here and change to keep the score. You can actually set it to take the last score, an average, or the highest score that they get onto it. And my favorite new feature that is in here on multiple attempts is I can now provide a waiting period. And so if you do want to allow your students to take the quiz as many times they want, you can go ahead and say, instead of just taking the quizzes, I want to encourage you to go back and read the chapter that's quizzes on. So I'm going to put in a time period, a waiting period of 10 minutes, assuming that they're going to take the quiz and want to go back to the chapter they just read, or review a video they just watched, or review the material so they can actually spend some time figuring out what they got wrong instead of just taking the quizzes so many times there. And so I'm forcing them to kind of dig into the material and learn by putting each of these kind of allowed limits, attempts, and putting in a waiting period. And the last option down here is restrict student view. What this does is students will be unable to view the results. So you can actually have them take a quiz and they'll only see the score and the percentage of what they got right, but it won't show them the actual questions. Or I can go down here and change what level of information I want them to see. Sure, they can see the questions, but they're not going to be able to see the correct response. So they'll be able to see the questions, what they answered, but they won't know whether or not they got that question right or wrong. And then I could even go here and limit, say, okay, I'll show you whether you got the question right or wrong, but I'm not going to show you the correct answer. And then I also have the ability to show different feedback for each of the items. So depending on your options, here are the basic settings that you have to choose on how you want to build your quiz. The two other areas, which I'll go in more depth in a little bit later, are going to be reports and moderation. Reports will show you an overall statistical report on the questions and what's being shown right, and moderation allows you to do some advanced controls. Again, that'll cover in a little bit later. But let's go back to build and actually start building some of our quizzes. So right now, I have the title right here. And again, if I wanted to change it, I would simply move over with my mouse and select the pencil, and that allows me to change it. For instructions, this is where I can go through here and type in information saying this will cover. And if I even wanted to add some other elements over here, I could add a video, or I could upload a video file. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to upload a graphic that I just pulled from the internet. So here's one. I'm going to add it on here just to add some extra information, just to break up from the text. And there it is. I can add a little photo. I can make it bigger. And I can even rearrange the size of this box to make sure that I fill up the whole screen like I want. And then when I hit done, you'll now see that I have my title and my instructions listed right here. When it comes time that you want to add new questions to this, you want to scroll down here to this little plus sign and select Add Content. This is where I'm able to choose the type of questions that I want to select. So as I showed before, I'm going to first start off with some of these multiple choice, some of the newer things that that are new to the next version of quizzes. So the first I'm going to choose is hotspot. I have the ability to do a question title, but this is not something that you have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and jump down here to this question, and I'm going to ask my question that I want to. And let's say I'm going to say, what is red? Just to keep it very simple. And then when I come over to this browse, I'm going to find the graphic on my computer and select it. You know what? I'm going to change this to orange just to make it a little bit better. And then if I go over here, and I can choose what shape of hotspot that I want to. I can be a square, an oval, or I can actually choose kind of my own shape that I want to. So in theory for this question, I'm wanting to select this little quiz show right here because it's the biggest thing that's orange. But this doesn't mean that you can actually change it to a smaller size. You can change it to the whole screen, or with a circle, I can just circle this W right here and have it be that's the area that I want them to select. When you're using hotspot, it's important that you select over the area that you're wanting them to. That way, if they're choosing something and they just happen to be on this edge, that it still covers them. And so you want to make sure that when you're using hotspots, you don't use images that are too complicated. You want to focus on the individual items. Then if I scroll down over here, I have my options. Oh, no, it's right here. If I wanted to allow an on-screen calculator for this individual question, I can go ahead and check it here. It's important to recognize that if you do not have the calculator turned on over settings, you will not be able to see this item right here. Another advanced feature is that you have is outcomes. If you have outcomes into your course, I can actually select an outcome right here for this question. And this is something that we can use to measure the success of your course on teaching various outcomes within your course. If you don't have an outcome, don't worry. This is something that you do not have to do. This is purely for a reporting functionality, but it's something that's easily built into the new quizzes version so that you can actually ask questions for individual outcomes and actually track it back to material to see how well it's doing. To add feedback, right down here, I have this little, what looks like a feedback discussion icon. When I select that, it's going to open up the little feedback student box. And so what I'm able to do is for the correct question, incorrect question, and general questions, I could put a response that will provide feedback to each of your students. Sometimes students or sometimes faculty will just focus on giving the incorrect answer, but I also encourage people to go ahead and give the correct answer, give some positive feedback as well. And so this will show the correct answer right here. I'll put good job. And I'll be on here saying, please review. And I can actually give them more information that I'm wanting them to go ahead and review. And then if you wanted to go ahead and give general feedback, you could place that right here. Um, to point out right here, this can be a media file, such as a graphic, or you can actually upload a video file or an audio file listed right here. So you're not tied to just one type of format. And so when I clicked on this little upload media icon, I can choose an image, an audio, or a video. This does require you to have it recorded outside in order for it to come in. So you have to have that media. It doesn't have that built-in recorder tied into the system yet. And when you're done for feedback, go ahead and select done. You do not have to add feedback to every question, but this is something that if you want to, you can go ahead and have that functionality built into it. So on this hotspot question, I've added the graphic. I've selected the area that I wanted to. I've added my feedback to it. And let's say I'm going to go ahead and adjust this to say it's worth 4 points and say done. And that's how I added a hotspot question. So let's go in and let's add a different one over here. And let me choose a classic over here, a true and false question. Scroll down here again. And again, for the question title, I don't have to put that in there. So I'm going to skip over that. And then I'm just going to ask a simple question. And the answer can be true or false. I want to make sure and select it. I'll say false this time. And I'm going to make it worth 2 points this time. And I'm not going to leave feedback, so I'm going to skip over this section right here and say done. So I'm going to keep adding another question in here, but this time I'm going to choose a numeric. Go down here, I'll ask my question. Let's say it'll be 12, 24. I can choose down here for a numeric. I can actually choose the exact response, or I can actually present a range. So I could say on the range, let's start for some reason, let's say 12 plus 24, all of a sudden enters as a 35, and we'll say it ranges up into a 38. And so that way, if they put any numbers going from 35 to 28, you can go ahead and add that in there. When it comes to the question title, it just kind of provides a more visual cue for it. So if I actually wanted to put up here on this question, chapter, or let's say, I can add different layers up here as a title. I really don't see a value in the title, so that's why I skip over the title field. But you can actually add a title up here and see when I go into preview, it'll add that right there. I really don't see a need for it. For me, I think the question is the most important thing because now you have a title and then the question, and you're just adding a little too much in there. I rather keep it short and sweet to the point. So now let's go over to essay and show you an example of what that looks like here. As you see before, here's where I can go ahead and answer my essay prompt. But then when I go down here to the other options, I can go ahead and include some of these other items. I can say, yes, I want the rich content editor, which is this box right here. I can say, let's add spell check to it. I want to show the word count and I want to set a word limit. So that way it's actually going to be counting given that you have 1 word, 5 words, 10 words, but I'm going to say a minimum of 30 words and a maximum of 100. So a very short essay. And then it will stop them from entering once they hit 100 words. And as you'll see over here, I actually have the ability to add some grading notes. So I can add some extra information to help your students kind of see what you're looking for when it comes to your grading. And then I have the same bit down here as being able to add points and add feedback. And so that's what it looks like when you're wanting to do essays. And you'll see right here, this will actually give you an example. Oh, I clicked on it, sorry. You'll see over here, this would be an example of what your students will see is a little text box right here. They'll have spell check on there. They'll be able to do the word count and it shows the minimum and maximum right there. If you're going through on any question, and let's say I go ahead, I'm going to select a fill in the blank and I go, oh, I made a mistake. I really don't need that question right here. You have that trash can off to the side and this trash can will allow you to remove it. So if you make a one by accident, you can always go through here and remove that question. Off to the side, you'll also see these little handlebars. When you move your cursor over, it changes into that little motion box. That means I can select it and I can actually move it around and change the order of the quizzes when you're going through that. So when you're seeing on here, the grading notes, let's actually see what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my typos in there for now. And let's verify it and see if I hit preview if the students are seeing those grading notes. So as you'll see, here's my calculator. It's turned on. I click it, it shows up right here. When I want to go through and select it, if I select right here or right here, it'll show that cursor. And it's looking like when I'm doing the essay, students do not see the grading notes, but I assume it's going to be visible when you're grading it on the teacher side. And that's an excellent point, Nicole, about the question title. And so I selected the correct answer there. It's going to show me the status, so it's waiting for the essay to be graded. It's going to show what I got wrong and what I got right there. So the grading notes are not visible to students. So let's go on to an example of the next question type, which is going to be fill in the blanks. For fill in the blanks, you want to be able to see how it changes over here where this STEM question is optional. Because really what you're looking for when you're doing fill in the blanks is you're wanting to go ahead and you're wanting to create an item, but then you're going to create a new blank. So I'm going to go through here and say, and so what I'm doing is I'm writing a statement. Blue is the best color. Then I want to select the text that's going to be the blank. So I'm going to create that right there. And so then this allows me to do a blank space. So I'm going to press enter. And as I see here, it changes to that little box. So anything that goes on here is going to be the blank. So I selected my word right here, highlighting it with my text, then hit enter. And this is where I can then change the example of what they're going to answer. So I'm looking for either a drop down. Open entry means that you're just looking for the word blue. So it's going to have a blank right there, and they're going to free type into the word. So that you're not going to give them any options or what they're doing. So you could actually ask a really complicated question about mitosis, and you're looking for a certain word. If you select that word, highlight it, and press enter, it'll change this box, and you're looking for them to free type it. Or my personal favorite is I can use a drop down. So it'll be, let's say, yellow, gold, and select it right there. Or what I can do is I can actually change it to be a word bank. So it's going to look very similar as before, but instead of it being a drop down, it'll be the word bank. So if you remember back to the demo I showed using the word bank. So let's go ahead and use a drop down. I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like here. And so now I'm going to go back to my preview. And I scroll down. Now it's going to show a drop down, and I see the options that I typed in: blue, yellow, gold. And the area that I highlighted and pressed enter for is currently not there. And so that way they can go ahead and choose that. So now let's exit the preview and let's change this to just open answers so you can see what that looks like as well. So I'm going to hit the pencil, and drop down is just going to be open entry. So we're looking for the word blue, which means they can type in anything they want. As long as it contains blue, it'll give them a correct answer. So I'll say done. And let's go back to that example. Oh, it just wanted to go true and false. That's interesting. So it actually went ahead. I typed in the statement and it changed it to a true or false. So that's what open is making it be there. Interesting. I did not know that. So I like that better as a drop down. Actually, I'm going to like that better as a fill in the blank or word bank. Sorry. And now see here's an example of that. So it actually says I added in the question there, fill in the blank. It shows the type, the point, fill in the blank. And then here's that question right there that said it was optional, what makes the most sense. And then I can either drag and drop it however I want. Because I'd previously answered that, that's why it's going ahead and saying here's the correct answer. But when I go to preview, you'll notice that the students don't see that. Whoa, hold on. Yep. And that way I can move the correct answer and drop it into the box. And now if you'll notice, is actually changing up the order since I changed it. And so the question that's at the very end is now right in the middle. And so that's how you do fill in the blank. I'm going to do two more of these options that you see right here, just so that you can see the examples of what this is. I don't want to spend too much time going over each individual one. However, if there's an area over here that you're wanting, feel free to put that in the chat box. The questions I'm going to go through next are going to be ordering, matching, and then I'm going to show formula. So here's when it comes to ordering. I'm going to go ahead and I can put in a question, place. So that's just me writing out a statement. If I wanted, I could add a top label up here, or I can go ahead and leave it blank. And so then I'll just type in some years in the correct order. So this is placed in the order. And then I can even go ahead and add additional answers over here. So if I want to do more than 4, I could add more dates. And then if I wanted over here, so for to get this question right, there's 6 questions. I'm going to go ahead and make this worth 6 points just so that my numbers add up. Otherwise, if I just did 1 point, it would do 1 point for this entire question. And again, I down here have the option if I wanted to add some feedback, I could. But I'm going to go ahead. These dates are in the right order that I'm wanting to. I'm going to go ahead and say done. As you'll see, it has this drag and drop look. And when we go up to the preview, you'll see that it's going to go ahead and shuffle those answers for me so that I, as a student who's taking this quiz, will have to rearrange this into the correct order. And so, see, these numbers are out of whack, so I can go ahead and move that down, move these around. I will admit when you're using these ordering questions that sometimes it can be a little bit hard when I'm changing the order, but with a couple quick moves, all the questions are currently in the right order, and then I'm able to provide my answer that way. So that's what ordering looks like. And now let's do matching. Here's what I'm going to add in the question over here. And let's say for this one, I'm only going to do matching with 2 of them. So I'm going to hit this trash can to remove these different question pairs out. I'm going to say apple, apple pie. And let's say cherry, just to keep it simple. And I can even add additional distractors in there. Distractors are ways that you can go ahead and find out exactly what it looks like here. I'll just show you the example. And let's show what that looks like when I go ahead and go into the preview. To be fair, I haven't used the distractors exactly in this, so this could be a surprise. And it did nothing. Oh, no, here's what it did. So when I added the distractors on there, it added as additional types of questions that could be answered. So that just adds questions that you know aren't going to be correct as ways to obvious these are not the right answer. So if I go over to cherry, that's what I want to choose there, apple right there. But your students still have the option to choose some of these other ones in there as well. So you can go ahead and do a matching where each of these are equal. Let's say there's 5 or 6 different matching. Add in 2 different distractors just to have more options that are within inside of it. So that actually worked out great. So now I'll exit the preview. And for the last example that I want to go ahead and show is going to be formula. Formula allows you to answer more complicated math questions over here. And so as you'll see over here, I have this question right here. What is 5 plus x? So I'm able to copy this question in here just as the example. And then it's going to go down here and it's going to choose the answers that they're looking for within the correct range. And you can also go through here and actually add additional formula definitions to this. I unfortunately am very slow with my knowledge when it comes to formulas. And so I'm sure if you're someone that uses this all the time, that these generate possible solutions make sense to you. Unfortunately, I do not know exactly what all of this means. But as you'll see on here, you can actually add in the different number of solutions, the decimal place. And this is where I would make sure you're encouraged to use feedback right here. So you can actually provide a explanation of why they got their question right, why they got their question wrong within these answers right here. But with the new quiz feature allows you to add of more options for when you're wanting to do math and formula questions in here and equation questions as well. And if you have your questions over here that you're wanting to of formulas, you can go ahead and hit generate. If there's anyone in the room that actually understands formulas a little bit better, feel free to let me know in the chat box, and I would love to get this explained to me. And that's how you can go ahead and if you wanted to use a formula question that is based on a formula, and then you can generate your possible questions. I believe it is a number. It could also be a formula. I'm not entirely sure. So let's actually go over here and see what the example looks like if it'll let me. Oh, formula cannot be blank. So let's say done. Okay. So look at in there, I type in the formula 5 plus X, I hit generate, and it came with these possible solutions down here as what you're looking for as the result. So now if I go to done, it's going to say, here's the question over here. And then that's the answer that it's looking for because I'm assuming that's what that means on there. Now, if I go to preview, you'll see the formula right here. What is 5 plus 2? And they'll be able to free type their answer onto here. So it's very similar to what's in the Formulaic answer. However, I believe they can type in because it does let you to type in characters here. So just a way to randomize your quiz. Okay. Unfortunately, I did not do very well in math, so I apologize. And so as you'll see right here, I'm able to build several different types of questions that you normally don't see in the questions that you've currently been able to build inside of Canvas. One of the other features that you see on here when you're building quizzes, if you want to jump to any one question you're working on, out to the side on this navigation, you can just select the number and it'll take you straight there to that question. You also have the ability to hit this little out arrow, which will expand each of these options so that I can actually see what each of these questions are if I'm wanting to jump through here. This is particularly useful if you have a large quiz that has over 100 questions. I can easily scroll through here and find what I'm looking for versus having to go on here and see everything question by question as you're adding it. And so this is going to be an example of what it looks like to build a quiz. But what I want to do is I want to jump into a quiz that I already showed you in the demo. And let's take a look at what that looks like on the reporting side. So I'm going to go back into my sandbox quiz. Here's my demo quiz. I'm just going to select it. It lets me go straight into it. But this time I'm going to go ahead and select on reports just to show you an example of what that looks like here. As you'll see, as it does the item analysis, you'll see that the number of scores, the high, medium, and low. You'll see how the average time that someone takes the course and what score that they're getting. But then if I scroll down on here, I'm going to be able to see how many people are getting the course correct and getting the course wrong, or the questions right or wrong. And so you can actually see over here is the question I'm asking fair? Are a lot of people getting it wrong? And so it's going to give you a more in-depth knowledge and reports of what they're currently seeing. And the same thing goes over here if I go to back to my reports. If I have my outcomes listed inside of my course and I have attached those quiz questions to these outcomes, I'm going to be able to see how efficiently my outcomes are doing inside of my course by selecting outcome analysis. Because so few people at our university use this, I'm currently leaving this blank. However, if you have more information about outcomes, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to go over and we can talk about some things right there. Unfortunately, I will say though, most of programs and departments aren't using it, so these outcomes would be purely used for you. They're using other methods to track outcome completion. When you're wanting to actually grade and look at the grades for your students, the best place to go is under Moderate. And as you'll see right here, it'll show you all of the students that you have listed. Here are my fake students, as well as my test students right here. If I want to look at the attempt of my student, all I need to do is select attempt 1, and I'll see exactly what they did during this attempt. Here's what they got right. Here's the files they uploaded. Here's everything they did with inside of this quiz. To jump back into another student, I can jump back, find another student, and hit attempt. And so this gives you a deeper knowledge of how your students in your course. Not only does it give you that high level view from reports, but you can go in and actually look at your individual students. One of the great features that has been added is it's more easily to see the time that your students have taken, and then you can actually click on the view log to see what your students were doing inside of it. So they can actually, if they choose back and forth on their questions, I can actually see at 11 seconds they chose this, the next seconds they choose this. And so you can actually see the progress. The things that can get interesting on here is if you see they're doing an essay and they do it in 30 seconds, but they have 5 or 6 paragraphs, you might kind of go things saying like, where did you get that information from? And this report will give you that information if you're wanting to. Or I say this log will allow you to do that. I would say in about 98% of the time, the log is something that you won't need. However, it's something that just gives you some additional information over here. If you move off to the very right side, you'll have this another moderate button. So if you have a student that you want to give more time or an additional attempt, I could actually go right here where I'm seeing their grades and their time that they're taking. I can actually go ahead and say, yes, go ahead and give this person more time. Or I can go ahead and say, I want to give them additional time of 5 minutes. So if you have any students that are requesting different accommodations, this is where you're going to be able to see the accommodations that they have, additional times, and additional attempts to take it. And that's all done right here under Moderate. If you also have the ability to, let's say I'm doing this quiz, but I want to go ahead and see the essay responses by using SpeedGrader, you can do that with this new version of quizzing. You just can't do it from this view. So I'm going to go over to the gradebook. I'm going to find that quiz that they took right here. So it's that demo quiz. I'm going to hit the drop down arrow over here and say SpeedGrader. And this will open up the quiz. Let me move to the right area. This will load the quiz right here, showing each of the examples, but give me the ability to view SpeedGrader to see the answers that they're typing in right here. I can check what point they want here, and I can go ahead and say, yes, they got it right, or I could manually change the points right here. I can even go through here and I can regrade, which means that I'm going to go ahead and change the answers. And if I want to change what they're saying. It's important that if you are hitting that regrade button, it's going to want to say, hey, just so you know, there are other submissions that have been completed, so you don't want to change anything while it's active, but you do have the option to go ahead and regrade there. So I'm going to award points for both of those previous ones, saying that, oh, I forgot to include this. And so now that adds that in there. For more information on regrading, feel free to email me and I'll be able to provide you some additional support information just to kind of shows it on there. It can get a little bit difficult when you're regrading a quiz that's already available. And so that's why you want to make sure that you only use these regrading options in a very particular situation. Otherwise, you could have to regrade all of your students' work. But this is if you go through and you discover a mistake and you want to change that when it's automatically graded. And so this right here said that this question was wrong. But let's say I want to go back in there and I just want to go ahead and provide extra credit because it was close enough. I can go ahead and change this score right here to a 1 and give this student a grade for this as well. And so that's a way that you can change a score without having to regrade and change everything there. And these are features that are also available within the old quiz version. It just looks a little bit better and it has more functionality built into it right here. And as you'll see here, this is where it'll show you whether or not they did the hotspot correct. Since it's right inside that box, you gave them that correct answer. But if a student selected over here, it'll say, here's a selected answer, and it's incorrect, and it's red. And then at the very bottom, you have the ability to fudge. Yes, there is document available for new quizzes, and we can definitely follow up and provide that for you. Fudge numbers. This is something that's also available in the current quiz versions. This is the best way. If you want to go ahead and fudge numbers by adding a curve, this is where you would go ahead and do that right here. So if you go through and you see that when you look at the reports and you're seeing that students are getting 2 questions wrong on every question, and you want to go ahead and give that to everyone, you can go over here to fudge numbers and you could add those scores in there manually as well. And as you'll see, it fudged the numbers right there and it actually gave a little bit more than I wanted, so I'm gonna go ahead and update that and see if it takes it away. Perfect. And because I updated all these other areas, so I added, gave a point there, that's why the score changed down here. And then to move on to the next student, I'll just go ahead and hit my arrow, and that'll jump over to the next student there, and I can use speed grader again. So since we had time, I'm gonna go in and go into a little bit more depth about item banks. Item banks is where you can create a quiz bank from either a previous quiz and import that into another quiz. And so for instance, down here, I've created these 3 sports questions. And when I created the questions, I went down to the option. Let me actually show you this again. So when I create a question down here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new true or false. And I'm going to ask this question is going to be, so I'm making the statement true or false. So golf is the best, golf is the best sport. But then I'm going to, once I have this question created, I'm going to go down to item banking and I'm going to add this question into a bank. Now, I've previously created one called sports questions, but if I wanted to create a new one, I could actually say new item right here and call this true or false. And add it right here. And so currently what I did is it's going to leave this question right here in the bank so I can see it. But when I move up here to this top to item banks, it added in a new question right here for true and false. And so when I went down here and I added these 3 questions, I put all 3 of these questions into an item bank called sports. So when I click on item banks, I see that I have the sports questions right here, and there's 3 total questions. If I select it, it'll actually show me all of my questions that I have right here. So the reason why this becomes so helpful is I can actually go through here and build a quiz, let's say on chapter 1. I could build a 10-question quiz on chapter 1 and add all those chapter 1 quizzes into a bank right here. This means when I go in and create another quiz, I can take these questions that have been banked in my course and I can add them into another question. So you could take, let's say, 10 quizzes, one on each chapter for chapter 1 through 10. And at the very end, you can make a final that takes 2 or 3 questions out of each chapter for your final quiz. So I'm going to go back into, I'm actually going to create a new quiz here. And let's say final, it's worth 100 points. And I'll set the due date well beyond. All right, I'll hit save. And so now what I'm going to do is when I add this question over here, I'm going to click on this little piggy bank right here. And it's going to allow me to see these questions I've already added right off to the side. And I can say, I want to add all of these questions right here, or I can add a certain group. So if I select this item, I now see the subtitle right here for my sports questions, and it says it's going to be worth one question per option. Well, let's say I only want to choose one question out of these three that are available, and it'll randomly select these questions. Well, if I hit the little pencil icon, it now gives me the ability to randomly select options, and I'm going to say randomly select one, and they're worth 1 point each. And so what I was able to do is I was able to use quiz questions from other quizzes I've already created, placing them into an item bank, and then create another quiz that uses those questions that are randomly selected. And so now when I hit preview, it's going to pull those questions from the item bank and randomly choose them right here for these questions. And every time I hit this preview button, it should change the question that appears into the screen. And so anyone that's used question banks before, you now see that this is a lot easier and simpler to create quiz banks from previous quizzes and input them into other quizzes, or you can actually shift them back and forth. And so this creates a completely random order of a number of questions that you've selected. All right, so now that we've gone through, and I feel like I've gone through and covered everything, I want to open it up to questions. So Roxanne, will questions of the quiz automatically update in the bank? I don't know. I don't think so. So the way you would have to update the item banks over here, I'm going to select on item banks. I'll choose sports questions. Let's say I want to go over here and hit edit there. So some students, I'm going to edit a copy. Yeah, see, it's already kind of giving me issues where it's not wanting me to. So I updated that. So now that added to that one. Let's go back into that other quiz and let's see if I updated the item bank quizzes, if now it's going to show up and change here. While I get this loaded, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. In order to see your hand, what you want to do is click on the participant tabs inside of Zoom. You'll see a list of everyone in here, and then you'll be able to see a little icon that has a raise your hand. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand, and I will unmute your microphone so that we can see your question and we can answer them together. And if it loads, we'll see if it actually, oh, see, it didn't want to do that time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and Mariah, let me unmute your microphone. So Dr. Mariah.
It's Maria.
Maria, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I had a question that I put into chat that I was hoping you could address, which is the question of multiple choice. Because so I'm an art historian, and when I've used quizzes, when I used quizzes last semester, because I usually teach face-to-face classes where we sort of construct these in paper exams, but I realized that for slide identification, for example, I would put an image in the sort of question box, and then I would create what the old Canvas called fill in multiple blanks, so that then it would create, like, series of fill in the blanks, 3 of them, one for artist, one for the name of the artwork, and one for the date. Does the new quiz system's multiple, fill in the blank have an option for filling in multiple blanks? I hope that made sense.
So from what so on the fill in the blank I had is where you write a statement and you're wanting to write multiple statements, I'm assuming. Or are you wanting to have it where you're looking for, like, if you put artist, they would free type the word art, the name of the artist to get credit? Oh, it looks like, hold on. There we go. Yeah, finally let me unmute you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's no problem. Um, no, I had that's exactly how we would work it. Is I wouldn't so much have a question as much as I would write for each image artist with a free form for them to fill in the artist name, title with the form for them to fill in the title, and then date for them to fill in the date. And it used to be that you would have to choose the fill in multiple blanks option, but now it looks like you just have fill in the blank and you create multiple blanks in a single question.
Yeah. So what the fill in the blank, the way I see, I don't even know if fill in the blank lets you add the photos anymore on this. So I don't know if that's the right. I might have to follow up with you after,
Okay.
because I'm sure there's a way. I just don't know offhand. Because essay allows you to just to free type into it, so that's not exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to follow up with you afterwards,
Okay.
and see exactly what that is gonna be, because that's a great one to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know you can add the photos into it, but the fill in the blank doesn't let me add the photos, so it kind of defaults what you're wanting to do there. Oh, there it does. It does let me add it. There we go. Never mind.
Whoo, that's
Now
relief.
it wanted me to do it. And so there is essentially is the image that we're putting in, and then no, that's essay. I'll follow up with you.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. And it looks like Mick Colib. I'm probably butchering that.
Yeah, it's Bruce McAllister. It's
See,
listed.
that's way easier.
Sorry.
What question do you have, Bruce?
First of all, thank you very much. This has been great. In your question banks, I vaguely remember in the old platform for quizzes, you could actually make questions within the question banks. Is that still, yeah, the item banks, is it still possible to put questions right in there?
So unfortunately, no. I actually spent a lot of time playing around with it. You can easily add any question over here. I hit this plus sign, it automatically adds it down here.
Sure.
The only way to do that is when you're creating a new question is to select it as an item bank, and it adds it that way.
Okay.
Because I've tried to go through here a lot of different ways of trying, and I haven't been able to find a way to add questions to it.
Got it.
So it's one you to create that question inside of a quiz and then assign it to a bank, and then that's how it shows up.
Okay, and then you went through it, but I just wanted to make sure. It looked like if you went back and edited in the question bank, it changed the individual quizzes.
Correct. So
Yeah,
because this final right here is just using the exam bank right here,
yeah,
when I went ahead and previewed it, since I updated that question bank in my other quiz, it went ahead and did list it and update it here.
yeah. Okay, great.
Um, so that is a great thing that you could do that I know you couldn't do beforehand.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
And so, Kathy, the next question that I'm seeing here that you have is what happens to your existing quizzes? You actually can take any old existing quiz and migrate it into the new version. And so right here, here's my sample old quiz right here. If I actually go over to my quiz section, which I'm in right now, and click on this dot, dot, dot here off to the side, I now have this ability to migrate. And so I can take previous quizzes either from previous courses, or I can even take surveys and migrate it over. And you'll notice the quiz icons look slightly different. So if it's just the outline, it means it's the old version. If it's fully colored in, it's the new version. And so I'm able to go to this old one, hit migrate, and it's going to migrate it automatically with your old quiz into the new quiz system. One of the features that it's also great about the new quiz features, if I click on this dot, dot, dot over here, I can actually duplicate quizzes I've already created, which unfortunately you couldn't do with the old quiz system. And so I can take one quiz, fill in everything I want to, copy it over and make a new quiz and just maybe use a standard formula for my chapters if I want to. And so that migrating quiz is very helpful. Is there any way to create questions outside of Canvas and upload them into Canvas? Not using this system, there isn't. There is an external tool that you can purchase called Respondus that is a quiz creating tool that will create a format, a file version that can be imported into Canvas using Respondus. That's something we currently don't have right now. Unfortunately, if you're wanting to take a quiz from an outside system, you're going to either have to copy and paste it, or it's going to have to be in a format, that QTI package that can be imported into it. And so Amy put some of that information into the chat box that covers how you can take stuff from outside and import that in. I wish they would have it where you could upload a Word document and it automatically creates quiz questions. That would save us so much time. All right, it looks like I'm not seeing any other questions. So the last thing,
Bradon,
yes.
There were a couple questions. They were a little ways up. Let me see if I can find them again. You might have answered them already. Where are you?
Outcomes are not visible to students. I see that one from Peggy earlier.
Okay.
And if someone wants to use outcomes, I'll be more than happy to work with you, because I kind of want to do a study with a faculty member on using outcomes in their courses. And so if there's anyone who's wanting to be bold to try some of that, please let me know.
Oh, do you know if it will eventually be compatible with Proctorio? I don't know if you answered that or not.
I would be surprised if it was not. Currently it is not, but I truly believe that that's the issue they're working out right now, is because it is in that test phase. We have it on and it's available. But I don't see why they would not allow it to be when it goes live. And Peggy, I am not seeing any issues with reliability or security. It's really more of, it's past beta. It's more into this alpha, not alpha. It's more into its final stages. They are currently, it was actually supposed to be released this December. But they pushed it back because of COVID and the pandemic. And so they didn't want to add in one more thing to change. And so it is available, ready to go. It's just those last features that they're waiting until the last second before they enable, of using third-party tools. One last thing before everyone goes. Your feedback is very much wanted for us. This is a new training, and so there's a couple of things I discovered that I want to change. So if there's anything that you see that you'd want to change, or some more information that you would like to hear, please feel free to give us feedback. Your feedback is very important to us. It's why we do the training. So if there's anything that you felt like we missed, or anything that we did right that you really enjoyed, please let us know. Your feedback is very much welcome and wanted, and so please let us know. Otherwise, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach us at odetraining@ucdenver.edu and look at our future trainings coming up down the road. We have a lot of great trainings coming down the road that our team is going to be giving. And so it's one of those things to where, please come back. We love helping you guys. Otherwise, I'll be in the chat room for a little bit more if you have any more questions. I'll be happy to do this. We'll be sending a follow-up email that will contain some of the guides on Quiz Next and the video of this webinar. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you in our next training.